March 6, 6:30 p.m. Administrator Chansky, call the roll.
Ball. Jensen.
Present.
Maroney. Scott. And Zierden.
Present. All right, all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. So we added to the agenda now, we are going to be doing approval and or amendments of the agenda. Do I have a motion to amend the agenda or approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve or amend the agenda.
Approve it or amend. Approve it.
Huh?
Approve it.
Okay.
Right?
Make a motion to
Okay.
approve it.
Second? Do you need to amend the agenda?
I would like to
Okay.
have it considered. I'd like to amend the agenda by adding the petition from residents regarding the disc golf course expansion under what I believe would be 8. I haven't had my agenda pulled up yet.
Okay. So one of the things that we had discussed is because we don't have a full council, we will be having a full discussion on this in the April meeting, which does include that and all the other things that we have to talk about moving forward.
Yeah, I understand that. I think there's a couple of items of business that have yet to be addressed. I don't believe the council formally accepted the petition that was presented at our February meeting. So I believe that was overlooked in light of the renewed petition of property owners. And what I'm gathering to be a desire of property owners to have council officially consider putting a hold on any and all activities with the expansion are reasons why I would like it to actually be added to the agenda.
Okay. And I don't think tonight is the time to be voting on something like that. I think that it would make more sense to wait for to have a full council in order to actually make a motion or to make any decisions on that.
Madam Mayor, if I may. So there is a motion from Councilmember Jensen to approve the agenda. So at this point, either there needs to be a second to that motion, or from my understanding is Councilmember Scott is requesting that if Councilmember Jensen would amend his motion to include that. So I guess it's one of those two things. Councilmember, I guess first Councilmember Jensen, are you willing to amend your motion to include that?
I was just going to ask you what you thought about.
Well, I think since the items of the disc golf course are going to be on the April agenda, there'll be a full public discussion, and the email that was received with the letter and the petition was forwarded to the council. It can be read into the minutes. It will be heard. It will be part of public record. And I agree that due to the fact we do not have a full council, it's not the appropriate meeting to do it. Your voices have been heard. Your requests for the meeting and being on the agenda will be honored.
At the same time, we've got property owners who have expressed their displeasure with the expansion, who frankly are uncertain at this point to what extent work will continue to happen. And I think as a council who's intending to be responsive to the community, to presently where things are at with the golf course, I feel as though we owe people in the community some clarification on exactly where does the expansion sit right now. Part of the concern being is that if we don't address this until April, how are they assured that nothing more is going to continue to occur there?
Well, it is March and it is snowy out. And so, I mean, at the end of the day, again, I think bottom line is we don't have a full council to make decisions that I feel. And we have listened to residents. A lot of us have spent hours and hours and hours listening to residents outside of the council meetings. And talking with them. And so again, it's not that we don't want to hear them, because we do. And I know that we do have a letter too that we can, whenever you think it's appropriate to read, but it's from Councilman Maroney on this issue as well. And so again, I think the appropriate time is to really discuss this and do it in the April meeting.
And again, Brad, the clarification will be provided. I mean, the residents' concerns, I've met with residents on both sides, spent a considerable amount of time, and I do believe, well, I know their voices are being heard. They will have a chance to speak, and I believe it's appropriate for a full council.
This time, Madam Mayor, you still have a motion on the table.
Can I second that?
You can.
Okay, then I would second Councilman Jensen's motion to approve the agenda as is. Any further discussion?
None.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. And moving on to the open forum, I know that a lot of you are here for the disc golf course. We definitely do, if you have something that you would like to say, to come up and say that during this time. Just know, though, that we will be looking at having a full discussion on this in April. And so I do invite anyone who would like to come up and speak now.
Tom Lillahei, 7460 Fairway Lane. I was noticing in the last couple of meetings that the mayor was lacking a gavel. And we used to have a gavel probably close to 10 years ago, and it was all battered. And I had my own gavel for 6 years, and I made a gavel for Todd when he was mayor. So I noticed you don't have a gavel, so you now have a gavel.
Okay.
That puts you in charge. So
Okay.
if you get that, everybody's quiet.
Okay. Thank you. I didn't want to be too loud up here, so. All right, anybody else?
Yeah, I guess I haven't been around here or anything like that. My name's AJ Larson, 7935 White Overlook Drive. I butt up right to the course, adjacent to, whatever the other backside is there. I'm honestly for it. I was approached, I bought my property back in November of last year, and I was approached with the petition that was basically stating, oh, hey, the city's gonna be turning this into some sort of recreational park. We're not sure. You look back in the yard, you just assume it's gonna be, who knows? So reluctantly, I was like, hey, yeah, I don't want anyone in my backyard, anything like that. Didn't read anything into it. I've got 2 small kids, everything like that, climbing at my legs. Basically one of those moments trying to get them out of my face, the person at the door to go away sort of thing, so I can carry on with my life. Should have looked into it. I guess with that, I've looked back at some of your guys' prior meetings, everything like that, and some of the stuff that's, been said about that group of people, it's pretty rough, calling people lesser economic status and you name it, and that's not true. That's uncalled for. And I grew up around the area. I know a lot of people around this area would love to have that. I've got, like I said, these small kids who, they like coming with me. It's fun to get out there in the woods and throw the disc and just play around. It's always a clean environment. The course we do have is clean, honestly. I used to live up in Fargo, and it used to be a big problem with littering and stuff like that, but around here, no. Everyone does a great job. So honestly, I'm for it. I'd love to see it. Love you guys to really consider finishing it up so we can get out there and play.
All right, thank you so much.
Bill Toft. I wasn't going to speak tonight, but I feel like I kind of insulted last week at the last meeting. And what I said was right out of a disc golf website funded by the Professional Disc Golfers of America. I wasn't making it up. Like I said, these folks are just starting out. They don't spend money, and I think I've proved that many times. One other question I would have, what's the quorum that's needed in order to pass, like Mr. Scott's addition to the agenda? Don't you just need a majority?
Yes,
So why wouldn't you go ahead and let that vote happen tonight?
because we don't have a full council.
But you don't need a full council if a quorum is only a majority, correct?
Right, but that would be like saying that we should only listen to some residents and not
Well,
all.
to my understanding, there was no vote on the disc golf course expansion anyway, and it was supposedly, I was told that it was probably put into the consent agenda after May of '21. In January of '21, the new mayor had a meeting with all the council members, and they had two items, they got to pick two items they wanted to address, and two council members decided to put the disc golf course expansion and the playground equipment purchase. It was sent to the Park and Rec Committee. The Park and Rec Committee came back and responded, let's do the playground equipment, but we gotta spend less than $140,000. That vote was taken, it passed, they bought the equipment, it was put out there, and the disc golf course expansion was put on hold, or so supposedly. I looked through all the minutes many times, and there's not one instance where the vote was actually taken to move forward with the disc golf expansion. All of a sudden, Mr. Humphrey was making a speech in November to the council about what he wanted to accomplish with the disc golf course, and all of a sudden, things get purchased. I mean, how'd this happen?
Yeah, and we've had plenty of conversations too about this, and we made a public apology at the last meeting. We understand that the way that things happened would
Well, I'm not
not
talking about
have
how it
been.
happened. I was talking there was no vote. So
Right.
when you have expenditures of $85,000, shouldn't there be a vote at the council?
I would assume so, I don't,
There was no vote.
okay.
There was no vote. I mean, I'd love to see it, if Mr. Chansky can find it. I'd love to see where there was a vote. All right. I guess that's all I'm going to say tonight, but
And again, if I could go back in time and change things, we would, but unfortunately, we have to learn from our mistakes, and we're trying to move forward the best way that we can. And
know-
it does start with listening to all of our residents, we absolutely
and I
have.
appreciate you have been very transparent about listening to us. You know, and I would have a lot more understanding if this project was going to result in, let's say, a tool and die operation being put back here in the back and hiring 25 high-paying jobs. That would be an economic benefit I can understand. I don't understand this economic benefit at all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bill, I would just like to respond as well. I have met with most of the residents that are against. I've also met with a lot who are for, but it will be addressed in April, fully with the concerns. The vote, I have also tried to determine if there was a vote taken, and what I said Thursday night is true. We don't know 100% for sure what happened. It was in Park and Rec. They decided to discuss it. I don't know where the input came from. And it was put in the budget, and Administrator Chansky can correct me after, and it was voted and approved. And that's what I know. And this will be thoroughly discussed at the April meeting, and your concerns addressed. We hear you loud and clear. We have the letter. It's going to be on the agenda. You're welcome.
In that way, I would actually like clarification on when it was decided for continued discussion to occur in April. Frankly, I was under the belief that in making the motion last month, asking staff to look into the cost to revert the area to its natural state, information would be coming forward. We would pick this back up at this month's meeting. So I guess I would like a little clarification from myself as to how was it determined that this is now going to be carried over till the April meeting. This certainly was nothing we voted on or approved as a council at our February meeting, was it?
Well, we didn't know that Councilman Maroney was going to be gone until after that meeting. And obviously, we couldn't predict when Councilwoman Ball was going to be back either. So it's not like this is something that just, at the last meeting, we would have known how many people would be at this meeting.
I didn't know Councilmember Maroney wasn't going to be here until 5 minutes before the meeting.
Okay.
Well,
Well,
I don't know that that's any bit of a reasoning as to how we arose at this not being discussed until the April meeting.
Well, I also know that we spend a lot of time talking to staff, which is what we really should be doing. And so I think that if you are maybe not getting clarification on things, you have my number, you have his number, you have their number. I think that communication has to also be initiated by you as well.
I think I initiate plenty of conversations. I don't need to be instructed on how to do that.
Okay, and I'm just telling you why you may not have known that. And had you, had a conversation with Administrator Chansky, you may
That
have.
is irrespective of the point that I'm trying to get across. When did we as a council decide the next time we were going to pick this up was going to be at the April meeting?
It wasn't as a council. I meet with Administrator Chansky to go over what is on the agenda. And knowing that they were not going to be there, we did not put it on the agenda.
And you realize that that goes beyond the powers that you have as an individual council
Time
member?
out, though. And also, he has been meeting with many of the residents. And at the end of the day, it is the fair thing to do to have this on the next agenda.
I'm just merely raising the point that we didn't take that up as a council and vote on it.
There's no way we could have known at the last council meeting that we weren't going to have a full council here.
We have a quorum.
It doesn't matter. We don't have a full council, and we believe you can respectfully disagree with us,
No,
and
I
I'm
do.
okay with that, and that's fine, and I respect that 100%. But I also feel like that is the right thing to do. We talk about doing the right things. I do believe that is the right thing. And that's fine.
But Brad, that motion that you made last council meeting that I seconded, it was that staff was going to look into it and provide numbers. I don't believe it was ever stated that it would be taken up at the March meeting. I just seconded the motion. Your motion was for staff to look into the cost to restore the expansion part of the disc golf course. And again, that was my understanding.
And you're probably right. I lacked the clarification of specifically identifying it coming back to the March meeting. That was maybe an oversight on my part, and I'll take responsibility for that. I guess I had gathered where we meet just on a monthly basis that if there's a motion to look into something and the information can be gathered, that it would be on our next month's meeting. So, point well taken, Steve.
Anybody else? Wanna come up?
Tim Olson, 31908 Blue Ridge Drive. At the last meeting, I actually asked about a moratorium and was told that it's February and there's snow on the ground. So now it's March and there's snow on the ground. What happens in April when there's not snow on the ground? And if there's no moratorium, is work going to continue on the disc golf course?
I will say this, in order for a moratorium, in order for a motion, we need someone on council to make a motion to put a moratorium in place. At the last council meeting, that was not done. No motion was made by any council member up here to do that. And on top of it, I think that we've given you a lot to trust the fact that we have been spending, like I said, a lot of time with you guys and hearing you guys and really looking at solutions to find, and so at the end of the day, I don't have a direct answer as far as, besides the fact that in order for anything to happen, a motion has to be made. And a motion wasn't made. And I can't just, say at the next council meeting, hey, we're going to make a motion to put a moratorium on it. But what we can say is that at the next council meeting, we will absolutely be having a full discussion on it.
Okay, in regards to your commentary about a special session regarding this topic, has anything come to light or come to pass with that?
Yes, so one of the things that I had looked into, and coming from the fact that everything started really in Parks and Recs, right, for committee. That's really the process. Anytime that we want to change anything, whether it's in the, on the personnel committee or, public safety committee or whatever that's where anything starts. So the disc golf course started in Parks and Recs. That's where you plan, that's where you research, that's where you, start steering committees. That's where everything goes. And so one of the biggest things after doing a lot of research on this and talking to you guys is we really need that time and that ability to send this back to Parks and Recs to have a workshop. And so really, we have to, as a council, give the Parks and Recs committees direction to do that. And yet, because we are not able to have a full council tonight, if there is any direction for Parks and Recs, we will be able to direct them next meeting, which would include a workshop. Because one of the things that we had discussed about potentially having in the workshop is to increase privacy rules, what kind of rules are going to go on, the sign out there. So anything else that would directly relate to, establishing that would go back to committee. Again, it's unfortunate that things take a little longer, but there is a process in how we have to go about this. So again, we hope that we can direct Parks and Recs at the April committee.
And also, I'd like to add to that, Tim, there also needs to be a discussion, I don't know as if it's a moratorium, but a pause, and to take a look at things. And that is going to be, April is going to be the discussion on disc golf course. Residents are going to speak. I know you've proposed a moratorium, but we just have to look at different ways. Pause is on the table, take a step back, but there has to be timelines. It just can't go on and go on.
We don't want it to either, and we've
Well, our
discussed that.
concern is, I'll be frank, 50 weeks ago, trees, while there was snow on the ground, started falling, and we didn't know nothing about it. So now, we're 2 months in a row where there's snow on the ground and we're not working on it. Our concern is that in this lapse, that work will continue.
Right.
If we get 3 weeks of sun, okay, and we can work in April, will work happen in April? That's what we're concerned about.
I understand.
I think it's a valid concern since this project started, that the trees started falling with snow on the ground. That is our concern. That
Yeah.
is my concern.
And I do understand.
I won't speak for anyone else.
Yeah, the biggest thing for us is, we came into this, and like I said, the amount of time to get the backstory and to listen to everybody, it was not overnight for us. Like, this is something that we've really, truly dug into, and it's something that we, have planned to make sure that we get to the bottom of and make the right decision for the community, and that doesn't happen overnight. So we are working as fast as we can with what we have right now. So, I know that we probably haven't given you enough to trust us yet, but
Definitely not.
and that's fine, and I understand, but we are new, so we will have to earn that, and we are trying to do that as best we can.
And that's my concern, that we are not taking the steps right now to say we actually are pausing and waiting to gather all of the information. To me, that's a very simple request. Yes, I acknowledge it's March and there's snow all over the place. I acknowledge that. It's irresponsible, in my opinion, saying we can't work. Then let's go ahead and say we won't work.
I understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
And just to clarify, that was every bit of what I was attempting to do earlier by amending the agenda. I think we have a long way to go to reestablish trust between us as a council in making decisions and the community, whether you're for this or against it.
And I don't really think that everyone's for or against it. I think there's a lot of middle ground here, and there's a lot of compromise, and I think that that's what 99% of the people in this room and in our communities are willing to do. So I do think instead of it being for or against the disc golf course, we really have to look at a different approach. It's not just like here's for and here's against. There's a lot of middle ground, and we're trying to get to the bottom of what that middle ground could be, and that's where I stand on it.
Tracy Curtin, 31709 Green Scene Drive. I just wanted to say thank you to council, even my neighbors that were willing to open the door and chat with me over the last week or two. I really appreciate everybody's time, and yeah, I had a great conversation with a lot of folks around me. And I think the thing that came out of it is it's very nuanced, and some of us are more affected, some of us are less affected. And I guess what I'm hoping to find is like clarification because each property and situation is so unique to, maybe how it is being affected. what is the best way that we're able to also participate to maybe not just get a blanket answer of like, oh, we're going to offer like some protection around that hole. Maybe that doesn't work in, certain situations where it'll work in other situations. So I guess as I'm hearing things unfold, I'm a little bit curious about, do we also get to participate in the Parks and Rec discussion? Or will Parks and Rec come to us and look at our situation personally? How can I prepare for that? I guess I just want to be prepared for the next coming meeting, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. And Parks and Rec is open to the public, and so I'm not, they're kind of, the way they run their meetings, there is room for public comment, but if we do anything, and we will have, potentially have the, workshop, which will be directly just this, which will then allow for the conversation between Parks and Rec but we have to first give them the direction on that, and that's what we hope to do at the next meeting.
I'd also like to comment, and Tracy, it will be part of the discussion because you can't have a blank, each property is unique.
Yep.
I mean, I looked at yours.
Yep, I appreciate that.
I don't think a hole should be there.
Yep.
But we have to take each property individually. It's going to take some time. And at the April meeting, this will be addressed. And like Mayor Zierden says, it then needs to go back to Park and Rec. It's open to the public. The people can speak, and then it should come back to the council for a vote. But it will be on an individual. It has to.
Yeah, great, yeah, because I just appreciated the dialogue that I was able to have with everybody, community members and council, and just appreciated everybody's time. So I'm just hoping to be able to, be able to continue having discussions.
Oh, we appreciate your input as well.
Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, we will close the forum. Move on to consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I will make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second?
Second.
All right, motion, Councilman Jensen, motion second from Councilman Scott. Any other discussion on it?
None for me.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Won't do so loud next time.
Gotta put a nick in it.
Sounds so loud. All right, we will move on to the Personnel and Finance Committee reports. Go ahead, Administrator Chansky.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So our first item coming from the Personnel and Finance Committee, can we just get myself in the right spot? There it is regarding upgrading our audio equipment for the council chambers here. It's been brought up, obviously. Some of the new council members have brought it up. It's actually something the council had discussed even last year regarding our audio equipment, specifically our microphone headsets. That these are not obviously the most comfortable, functional things on the planet, and desire to look into, is there something that works a little better, is a little easier to wear and use during meetings. Also coming with the expansion of the park board, we also realizing we have a lack of microphone problem where we are wanting to record all those meetings, and with especially at the park board, with all 7 members having a microphone that actually doesn't leave any microphones for staff except for the podium and then the wired handheld back here. So makes it an issue for staff having to bounce up and down from the podium and stuff during those meetings. Assistant Administrator Ike did look into some different options for the council, working with Digital Horizons, who put in our software. We presented a couple of different options to the committee, and the committee made the recommendation to replace the city's current headsets with ear-worn microphones and expand the system with 2 additional replacements. So right now, as our system is, we can have up to 9 wireless microphones, and we have 7. So we would be replacing these current 5 headsets with an over-the-ear headset that looks like this. So it's kind of a very simple, goes over one ear, extremely light, weighs less than an ounce. microphone, highly efficient. When the big thing is also works with our current system and our power packs, we wouldn't have to upgrade anything. There were unfortunately a lot of options that would work with our system without upgrading. Once you have to upgrade, now we're talking like $10,000 plus. With looking at kind of doing the city hall assessment, we weren't really comfortable making a recommendation to make a huge investment when we're not really sure what the plan is for city hall long term. And if there's any kind of upgrades that can be done to this building or what's going to be done. So there was this option. There's also an option of looking at lapels. As we told the committee, the issue with giving everyone a lavalier or a lapel mic is you have sound balancing. Those are omnidirectional mics. They pick up everything in the perimeter. When you put 5 or 7 people shoulder to shoulder all wearing lapel mics, it makes audio very difficult, and Deb would actually have to be sitting in the back like balancing sound during meetings. It's just not ideal. So that's what we went through with this option. It would include, so the recommendation includes replacing these 5 current headsets, and as well getting 2 new headsets and power packs. So we would have 7 over-the-ear mics and then the 2 existing lapel mics. And they recommended going that route. It comes with a cost of $3,872, and the recommendations, we do have some ARP, American Rescue Plan Act dollars left that the council last year designated towards office equipment, and so it would be to use those ARPA dollars to cover this cost of $3,872. So that is the recommendation coming out of the Personnel and Finance Committee on this issue.
Do you guys have any discussion over this?
I'd like to see a new microphone and not have these. I'm jealous Brad always gets the lapel.
All right, do we have a motion to approve the purchase?
I'll move.
Okay,
Second.
all right. And then, any more discussion on this? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, next up, go ahead, Commissioner
Okay.
Shansky.
Next item, Madam Mayor, is regarding the acquisition of a 1-ton truck and sander. These are replacement items. So in the 2023 budget, we budgeted for the replacement of the current 1-ton and sander in the Public Works Department. Public Works Supervisor Zierden went out and got different quotes, got 3 different quotes that were attached in the packet. One for a Chevy product, a Ram, and a Ford. The Chevy product being through the state bid process, and then the Ford and the Ram coming from local vendors. They all were relatively within budget, except I think the Ford was a little above the budget. And after some discussion, the Chevy product, it's how it works with state bid, is a specific dealer works with Chevrolet and submits a bid. And so that would be a Chevrolet dealership out of Hibbing. So if you buy through the state bid, it comes from that dealership. And because there was only about a $400 difference between the Chevy product and the Ram product, which would be coming from Tanner Motors in Brainerd, the committee recommend going with the Ram product and being able to buy locally. So they are recommending that the city purchase a Ram 3500 from Tanner Motors for $45,780, as well as, and then it has the Rugby aluminum dump body, which is what we put on that chassis, for $18,860.50. And then by Byers stainless steel electric driver sander from North Central Bus and Equipment for $10,457. We will note that our current 2008 F350, the V-plow and the current V-plow we have for it and the sander will be sold as surplus once the new equipment arrives.
Okay. Any discussion on that? On the choice?
None for me.
Okay. Motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay.
I second.
All right. Councilman Scott make a motion. Councilman Jensen second. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. Next on the list.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, as we've been working through finances and things, and something I've noticed in my almost a year now with the city, just learning how we operate, always looking for different potential options for process improvements. And so what we brought before the Personnel and Finance Committee was a discussion on how we bill our sewer bills. Right now we bill quarterly currently, and it's $75 per ERU, which stands for equivalent residential unit. So a single family home is one ERU, and then it goes on from there, like a duplex is two, et cetera. Right now, so we bill quarterly, and right now how we bill is we bill at the beginning of the quarter. So we send out, and for example, in January, quarter one billing went out for January, February, and March. This does come with some issues that can arise from this, mainly being if a property sells during the quarter, we end up having to issue refunds to a customer and then trying to figure out how to prorate the next customer. Also, what happens sometimes is, for example, a new build will come online, will get approved, they'll get their certificate of occupancy, and we might get that CO shortly after the utility billing's gone out already. And the city's policy has not been to do like continuous billing. And so then people end up with like a free quarter of sewer. One of the easy ways to just avoid all of this, and is kind of how most utilities actually bill, is to bill in the rear. So for, first quarter, January, February, March, you'd bill in April, for everything that you did do. Benefit of that, again, is if a property changes ownership, they would contact the city and say, I am selling this house as of this date. We can easily then just issue a prorated bill to them and then start the next person, the new homeowner, on that date for their billing. So it's a lot easier to give them just a prorated bill than have to issue a refund from an accounting perspective. Also, we would never miss if a new property came online because you just start that property that day. So we brought that before the Personnel and Finance Committee, and what their recommendation, they felt it was a good idea to go down that path and to do it effective for third quarter billing. So second quarter, those bills, that's April, May, and June, we would still issue those bills in June. We would put an insert with those bills telling people that we would, if the council chooses to adopt this recommendation, that we would be switching for third quarter. So they would get their bill in April for April, May, June. And then in July, we would also do more communication lists reminding people that they're not going to receive a bill in July like normal. Instead, they'd receive a bill in October for July, August, and September. So that is kind of a do. And then moving forward, it would just always be for the previous 3 months. So that is what the committee recommended, was to change the city's sewer billing cycle to be at the completion of each quarter, effective third quarter 2023.
None for me.
Yeah, I'm fine.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Jensen, second Councilman Scott. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Opposed? Motion carries. On the list.
And then the last item from the Personnel and Finance Committee, Madam Mayor, members of the council, is that Police Officer Paramedic Nate Peters submitted his resignation to Chief Sandell on Thursday, February 29th. His last day of employment will be actually this Thursday, March 9th. He has accepted a position with the Brainerd Police Department. Actually, the Brainerd City Council will be ratifying that hiring tonight. So what we are asking, and the committee has recommended, is that the council accept the resignation of Police Officer Paramedic Nate Peters with regret, and then authorize the staff to conduct the hiring process to fill the vacant position.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second. He'll be missed. We were just fully staffed. Sorry, Chief Sandell. Aye.
All right. New
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this is it's a new business / old business kind of item regarding short-term rentals. Really what's kind of bringing back is in the last couple meetings, and especially what we heard from the last meeting and discussion on short-term rentals, there was really no direction formally given as to next steps. Obviously, the ordinance amendments to section 515 were approved, and we are slowly beginning the process to issue those short-term rental licenses. But we did hear that there was some interest in having further discussion or bringing back maybe ideas of best practices or something. Really wasn't sure kind of what the council wanted to do. I know there was mention of a workshop. I'm not exactly sure what the council had entitled for that workshop. If you want to hold one, we can do that. The other recommendation that we as staff are kind of making is if you would want to, we as staff could draft some best practices if that is something the council, again, this is something that we'd gathered during that last meeting that could be published on the city's website and provide to license holders. Again, these are not binding regulations, just something that says, hey, here's how to also be a good, in addition to the requirements you have as a short-term rental operator, here are also just some good general practices to be a good neighbor. We could provide that. In this situation, staff, we could easily draft the document, bring it back to the council. Council could then take public comment on it if you wanted. Just maybe a little more structured. Here's actually something to react to. And so really at this point, what we're just seeking is is there any guidance the council has desired how to proceed with short-term rentals? If there is indeed more discussion you want to have on this issue.
Yeah, I think from the last meeting, we did hear from Mike Fish, who does manage rentals. And one of the things that, he had developed was best practices and basically his rules for when he works with his owners. And if people are going to basically manage their own properties, it would be nice if we had all of those best practices that we could then give them. Because sometimes, a lot of times too, there's different things that you can do to make sure that your neighbors, feel more comfortable with that and they know exactly who to call and what that process is. And so I thought it might be good if, potentially staff could draft up with, those best practices and have those available for all of the residents or short-term rental owners in Breezy Point.
Couple things. Administrator Chansky, how many applications have the city received, out of curiosity?
I think we're about 30.
Okay.
And I know I took another call today. So they're slowly coming in, but we are still far from our cap.
One thing that needs to be addressed is the non-conforming properties that previously were exempt from having to obtain, at the time it was a vacation rental, whether interim use or conditional use. But now that the city has gone to licensing, there are properties that are going to need to obtain a rental license.
Correct.
And is there any plans to address that or notify residents or, we've never really discussed it. It came up.
Well, once we get through all these applications, we're kind of slowly getting to them as we're having the time. Once we've gotten through them and we have our master list of everyone we have, we'll then be able to go back off of previous lists we have, like the last list we got from the county before they ceased to license rentals, and see if there's anyone we're missing. And then also look at, we can look at Verbo and things like that and see if there's anyone else out there that we're missing. And then we'll go to start process of informing and noticing that you needed, this has changed, you need to come and do a compliance.
Because those properties could potentially push us over the 60 limit. And then there would be people that would not be able to rent. So it's something that needs to be addressed.
But I will say this, Councilman Jensen, as well, that all short-term rentals as of at least December that we were aware of or were notified of this change. So
Great, thank you.
They all received notification packets.
Also, as far as enforcement, I think residents, that's one of the big fears. Is it going to be enforced? I would like to see for the police department to somehow flag, there's something specific in a report, if it relates to a short-term rental, that it can be searched in the database. And where I'm headed with this, and we've had this discussion before, Crow Wing County had a 1-800 number. They received like 1 or 2 calls, but the calls were going to the Crow Wing County Sheriff's Department. The Sheriff's Department and Crow Wing County weren't talking. So if we can find a way, a box to check, however it's done, just so we can keep track and see, is there problems, with this? And then as far as an enforcement type document, I know we've had conversations before that for residents, the property owners' names and numbers would be posted on the city website. So I think that would, we need a timeline, on that, to get that accomplished. And then I think we take a step back, see if there is any issues, and if things arise, address them, say, mid-year. I mean, we don't know if there is going to be issues, and then look at it if a public hearing is needed, or there needs to be tweaks to what we're doing, then we look at it at that time.
Yeah, I think that if we put together just a list of best practices for the owners, if issues do arise, then, we're able to say, hey, we gave you this information on how to manage your rentals.
Correct.
You didn't follow it, so, but at least we're covering our basis to say, hey, we are giving you something that if you follow, you will be more successful. So that's kind of the thing that I thought,
Yeah, I agree. Best practices would be good and helpful to the property owners.
Well, and here's a question that I have, which I think is exactly why this council needs to have conversations around this ordinance, is I am struggling, and I know I'm not the only one, to understand what city government's role is with having an ordinance around short-term rentals. Okay, so what is the role of Breezy Point city government in regulating short-term rentals? I think it's a fair question. And Administrator Chansky, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the understanding that I've come to on why this short-term rental ordinance has been in front of the council for as long as it is it started really with Crow Wing County imposing essentially an ordinance that they passed under their health and wellness sort of ordinances in the county to basically step in and say, we are going to license short-term rentals in the county. So more or less, it forced the city council at the time to, consider, okay, do we have Crow Wing County issue licenses, or do we step in and take this on ourselves by establishing our own ordinance and issuing licenses? So that's kind of how things began. And then as time went on, the county backed off. They relaxed their approach by saying, we're not going to issue licenses in all communities across the county. We're going to handle this as basically a zoning matter under our zoning powers. At which point, the county cannot exercise zoning authority in incorporated cities. So it became all the more, I guess, necessary that the city council consider having a local ordinance to regulate short-term rentals. Did I get that right, Administrator?
Yeah, that's spot on.
So I guess to me, anytime that, the city adopts an ordinance, it would seem important to really understand why. What are we intent on doing? There have been short-term rentals in Breezy Point for forever. And, if I remember right from prior conversations, while adjoining property owners may have experienced issues from time to time, the city has only received one formal complaint. So, you know, again, I just keep going back to that place of why do we need an ordinance? Why shouldn't short-term rentals be allowed as they've been allowed for years? And really leave this as a civil matter. If over time, more and more issues come up, there are emerging troubling themes occurring in the community where it makes sense for the council to step in at that point and say, okay, now an ordinance is appropriate. These are the reasons why. This is the intended goal. I can understand why at that point there would be a need for an ordinance, but I just really am struggling right now with what are we doing?
Yeah, and I
Issuing a
agree.
license.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that but I don't think we're the only city that's struggled. If you've seen just the last council meeting in Cross Lake, I mean, Pequot just, said we're gonna follow county. So it is something that a lot of cities are struggling with. And I think the biggest thing for residents is they just want to feel like if there's an issue, what do I do? And I think that that's still, it is a hard question to answer because it is,
But what are we gonna do now with the
Right,
ordinance?
right.
Okay, I mean, this really does come down to, I would say, mostly a matter of enforcing the ordinance. So, I don't know, Chief Sandell, do you have the resources in the police department to step in now and start enforcing short-term rental issues that continue to surface?
Our role currently, if someone has an issue, there's a noise complaint, disturbances, whatever, we respond to all those. So I don't see short-term rentals being any extra work for us, because if there's a problem, we're already gonna get a call and respond.
So if somebody lives next to a property that's being rented on a short-term basis and there's an issue with somebody having parked on an adjoining landowner's property, you're equipped to respond to that
Absolutely.
as well as everything in between.
As long as it's a criminal matter, some kind of an ordinance violation, something of those sorts, then we would deal with it, yes. And just to clarify a little bit, we have responded to short-term rental issues, noise complaints, not a ton over the past, but we have. So there's been, several cases, whether it's a bachelor party or something, and the group got loud or whatever, we were called. It has not been a large problem.
Yeah, and I think that with just the owners, we've seen a lot of owners come forward and say, you know what, I'm willing to do whatever it is that I need to do to make sure the neighbors, feel comfortable. And I think, again, that's where kind of your best practices come in, making sure that the owners have their number publicly displayed on their front lawn, back lawn. Everybody in that radius has their information. I mean, I think that, again, it's just.
And I also think, Brad, that yes, years ago, there's been rentals. In the last 5 years, the increase in short-term rentals has been huge. Obviously, we are a resort community. There needs to be some kind of balance. That's why the ordinance was passed. What previously happened is the city had a vacation rental ordinance. It was with good intentions, but they did nothing with it. So what that created was non-conforming properties, a lot of them, that now aren't under the rules. Well, since we're doing it with a license, the land use training, this subject came up, and there is non-conforming properties that will now have to be licensed. I've personally been on the end of a property that is non-conforming. To be perfectly honest, the city was of very little help, and I took it upon myself to work with the property owners and take care of the situation. It can go badly. enforcement is always going to be the question. You know, if it's a property owner and a resident, one's words against another, you know, then if they won't pay fines, then you have to get the city attorney. So it can be costly, and I think that's why every community around here struggles with it. But I think there needs to be some protection for residents, that they have a recourse. You know, I personally think it's good. You limit parking, you have parking issues. Noise complaints, yes, the police can respond, but you're still pitting a resident against a property owner or the group that's renting, and it can be potentially a dangerous situation. I think the short-term rental owners that spoke, I was impressed by what they had to say. The controls with Airbnb and VRBO, they don't want people renting that are going to cause issues. But I think it's very important to have the ordinance and to have protection for residents. And also, you know, the renters, anybody that spoke that rented, they all provided contact information to their neighbors. Now, ones that don't, there's potential for issues. But I think the ordinance went into effect in January. We're now issuing licenses. We need to look and see, are there any issues?
Yeah, I mean, part of, you know, and some of this comes from the newly elected officials training that we're all able to
Yep.
attend is, you know, I do still wonder about, are we creating more of an administrative burden on the administrative staff, issuing licenses, keeping records, doing the various things that come with administering an ordinance in this way. We've got other resource needs that go into, you know, supporting a decision and maintaining an ordinance as such. And I wonder, I still have questions about, are those additional administrative tasks, is that kind of work around an ordinance in this way equivalent to the actual gains that were being created by having the ordinance in place?
We won't know the answer to that for 6 months,
Yeah.
8 months. I mean, that's the thing, nobody knows.
Yeah,
I don't
I would
think
say
it-
it'd be nice to just reevaluate at the end of the renting season to see how things went and make changes from there. But, yeah, I think that, again, I think it would be, I know that the Crow Wing County, they are now looking at having a better setup, right? So they are looking into potentially doing what we're doing, which is best practices. So they give that out to the people that, you know, the owners that apply. They're also, you know, making sure that, you know, the information about who's licensed is in the database for the Crow Wing County Sheriff's Office. So they are also taking steps to do that. And so if they get, you know, if they get all of that together and, you know, maybe then we look at not having an ordinance down the road if it just isn't a problem. I just think we kind of see how it goes this year. But I agree, it's a lot of administrative work, I'm sure, as Administrator Chansky can speak to.
I would like to see us actually reevaluate where we're at before we hit on like being within 10 of our cap. Because you had mentioned that we've issued 30 licenses right now.
We haven't issued them all, but it's roughly how many applications we have in the queue.
And so we're halfway to the actual
Cap, roughly.
cap. That's what I would request, is that when we maybe get to having issued 50 licenses, I think it would be good to just bring this back and check in and see, you know, what we know differently at that point than what we know now. And because that's part of my concern. I mean, I'm just going to say it. I'm a property owner's advocate. I think, you know, to the extent people have legal rights in their property, they got to be able to do within reason what they want to with it. And I would like for us to have more discussions on this before we bump up against that cap. I frankly would hate to be the 61st person to come forward and request a
Right.
license.
Right, I agree. I also think too, there is a benefit. I know the county, what do they charge, $800 per license? I think it was $700-800.
Unless they've changed it, last I knew it was a sliding scale based off of bedroom size.
Okay, and so there is a benefit, I guess, to the city of a non-tax revenue that comes in, having some kind of licensing system within within the city, because we don't see that. If the county just issues a license, we don't see any of that within our own city as far as our revenue coming in, so.
But if the council were to end up repealing this ordinance at whatever point in time, it's not like the county would step in and start issuing licenses, correct?
No, not unless the council contracted with
With
Crow Wing
them,
County
yeah.
to do that. But there is no, but yes, as you stated earlier, because this is now a land use issue in Crow Wing County, they have no jurisdiction in the city of Breezy Point. So unless, if the council were at some point to repeal the current ordinance, Crow Wing County would only step in if the city licensed or contracted with Crow Wing County to do so. And per Crow Wing County has doing their new process, to license with Crow Wing County, you must adopt their ordinance. You just do whatever they do, and then you have at that point no say. They're not gonna change their ordinance to fit Breezy Point. They're gonna enforce their ordinance in their manner, function that we see fit, and then the city, our staff and stuff would pretty much, we'd say we have nothing to do with this. So if someone called for regarding a short-term rental, we'd say talk to Crow Wing County.
And I think there is a benefit, though, to having somewhere a license for residents, because one of the issues, again, is if the sheriff's office showed up on a call in a house and there wasn't information in their system about it being a short-term rental, and let's say that short-term rental was managed by a property management company, then it would state in there, call the property management company. And then that's who would show up in the middle of the night at that rental home, not the owner. So there is a benefit, at least, whether it's contracting with the county to hold that data on who's renting or the city, there is that benefit of knowing who should they call in the middle of the night, should they arrest someone at that home. So that's where it's, do you let the kid, that's kind of where it was at, where it was, I think Pequot voted on it, where Pequot said we're just gonna go with the county, so all of the licenses go through there, so we don't have to deal with it. But then that, making sure that the county has that information so they call the right people.
Should I make a motion to the?
A motion would be appreciated.
Yeah, so.
Direction would be appreciated.
I just, to, I guess, memorialize where we're at with this, I'd make a motion to ask staff to bring short-term rental ordinance back to the city council at the point of having 55 licenses issued.
And with that amendment, one of the things is do we then craft a best practices that we give to our owners?
In between times?
Yeah, so basically
Sure.
making sure that they know, hey, here's what you should do to make sure that you keep your rental under control.
Sure, yeah, I'd amend or add to my motion then to also develop best practices for short-term rentals that can be distributed to property owners.
So if we hit the cap in a month, we're not gonna know, we're not gonna have any data. This is just strictly for discussion purposes, correct?
Correct.
Because I wanna see that, the city's never had any data on rentals, issues, enforcement. So as long as it's just discussion of the licenses,
Yeah.
I'm,
It's a discussion too, because if it's number 61.
yeah,
like you
yeah, what do
said,
we do?
yes.
Because then we're up against.
Yes.
Well, the goal would be, and why I spoke to 55, is that we could get this back in front of the council before we nudge upon number 61.
Yeah, I agree.
Whether that would be, in 2 months, at the end of this year, I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Sure.
How fast licenses are applied
Okay.
for.
All right, appreciate the clarification. Yeah, I'll second the motion.
All right, so a motion from Councilman Scott, second from Councilman Jensen. Any other discussion?
None.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? right, motion carries. All right, staff reports.
Got one other item, Madam Mayor, 9, old business 9A, before we go to staff reports. So just regarding the city council retreat.
Oh, yes.
This item, obviously, is something we discussed back in January. Trying to get this scheduled. Unfortunately, after I sent out the packet, I got communicated with Mayor Dave Bartholomew, who we discussed before about having to facilitate this retreat, and the council indicated that you were very interested in having him kind of come as a third neutral party to come and facilitate that. That the 2 dates that we kind of put in the packet, April 22nd and 29th, he's actually going to be in Europe. So I've asked him for a litany of kind of other dates. And I think at this point, what I would like to do, if the council is up for it, is get the dates from him, share them with all of you, come up with the consensus of a date, and then we'll just schedule it. Obviously, this is a noticed meeting. It's a public meeting, so we'll get the notice out. And the next meeting, at the meeting in April, because it won't likely occur before the council meeting in April, we can also publicly get it out then as well. But at this point, I was hoping we could actually set it tonight. I think at this point, we're just going to have to do it offline. I'll get the dates from Mayor Dave, what works for him. I'll share it with all of you, and then we'll figure out what the best date is, and we'll just get that scheduled.
Okay, perfect.
All right.
Unless there's any questions.
So with that said, we're looking at a retreat that would be May or after. So
I did also ask him for if there was maybe like April. I know Councilmember Jensen said he's not available for April 15th. What about April 8th as well as kind of May? He and I also intend to have a call this week to discuss if there's other forms in which that kind of facilitation might take place where the council can still have the retreat even if he's not necessarily physically present. So we can keep moving forward. So he and I are also going to have that conversation this week. So once he and I have that conversation, I get the dates, I'll communicate back to the council, and we'll get something on the books as soon as we can. Because I also would like to get this, I think it's important for the council to have this retreat, and so I would like to have this as soon as possible, just as I know you all would as well.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, if part of the idea here is to get council and staff's input as well as the communities on goals, on priorities for this year and beyond, I think the sooner we can accomplish that, the better. And just recognizing that as we get into summer, it's not going to get any easier.
Nope.
So.
And that's why he will have that discussion this week of, okay, if we can't get a date where it works for him and works for us, what are some alternatives that we can still have an effective conversation? If it's him facilitating remotely or some other, or maybe he's just not involved at all and we just move forward on our own. So
Is that something that you've potentially entertained or looked into at this point? Is if it's not going to work for that gentleman, who else?
yeah, we'll look at who else could potentially do that. There are others that we could also look into. I know who'd be willing to do that. So, but the goal is to get that done as soon as possible. So, hopefully, maybe even this week. So, that's just kind of where we're on that item, Madam Mayor.
All right, so now on to staff reports.
Okay. So not too much really to add. We'll just a couple updates, just get out there, just keep people aware of, like, for example, our website that is still in the works. Had a little bit of a snag in that process in that our project manager left Civic Plus, and so they had to bring in a new project manager and kind of pick up the pieces where we're at. But we're still moving forward with that. As you can see, we had a newer format look for our agenda. I think I mentioned when I sent out the agenda. This is a product of actually the one aspect of our new website, which is our agenda management software. So it's kind of a back-end site. So right now we can still use it to create this agenda, and then we just have to download the PDF. But once the website is live, it'll interact directly with the website. So when we publish agendas, when we publish packets, they go directly onto the website. We'll be able to link directly onto the website. Council meeting videos, so when they go up on our YouTube, it'll actually be like March 6, 2023, and there'll be there'll be an icon to click on the packet. After the meeting, there'll be an icon to click on the YouTube video, so you don't have to go separately to YouTube. You can just click that. You can put the minutes, so it's all nicely together. We'll even have the ability to actually bookmark the meetings, so we can say like this item began at this time so people can like watch the meeting and have the agenda right next to each other. So that'll be a nice product that we can get down. Also, once it goes live, and again, we are a few months from that, unfortunately, at this point, because we've had that slowdown, residents will actually be able to sign up to get notifications. So anytime we publish a agenda for City Council, Parks and Recreation Committee, Planning Commission, Personnel and Finance Committee, or Safety and Public Works Committee, they will get a any one of those 5 that they sign up for, they'll get a notification anytime we publish an agenda or a packet. So that'll also help with the communication as well. So the website is still slowly progressing. Beyond that, I think that's the only really main update that I had, unless Chief Sandell or Public Works or Zierden, if either of you had anything you needed to update the council on. Okay. So we have, Madam Mayor.
All right, so the last mayor and city council report. So this is really, you know, our time to kind of say what's been going on in the last month since the last council meeting. So do you want to let people what you've been up to?
Yeah, the planning and zoning meeting, there was an application for conditional use permit. It was a home business medical device manufacturer that there was a hearing, an interim use permit issued in December, so the planning and zoning had a quite lengthy discussion at that time. It's off Bushman Road. The conditional use permit was issued. The reason it was needed is the accessory structures were 5,516 square feet, so they were 516 square feet over the allotted 5,000. It's a 20-acre piece of property. No issues would be caused from it, and it was, granted. Also, I did bring up that this council has discussed rewriting, having the ordinances rewritten. That's going to have to include if there's anything in the comprehensive plan. Administrator Chansky provided a link to the Planning Commission, which showed what the city of Brainerd had done. I don't know how many of you look at the ordinances, but they can be very difficult to understand the way the city of Brainerd redid them. They're very easy to understand. If people are going to build, it has diagrams. This is how it would look, where you can do it. And it's something the council, has slated to move out, later this year for discussion. So that's really all I had.
Okay. Anything, Councilman Scott? What have you been up to this last month?
Life. Yeah, as I kind of briefly mentioned or made reference to earlier, did attend the newly elected officials conference put on by the League of Minnesota Cities last Friday and part of Saturday, and really did find it very beneficial. It's interesting how over time the number of things that change. I mean, that's life, right? I mean, it's constantly changing. So, yeah, I guess that's other than that, I guess don't really have anything else. The other things that I was involved with was what the administrator went over earlier in the agenda with the Finance and Personnel Committee. So.
Perfect. Right. Well, I'll just leave it at this. I mean, I do appreciate every phone call and email that we've received. Honestly, there's been so many that have come in. I mean, we have talked to so many people, and I think at the end of the day, we really do like that people are involved, and I think that it's really important that you are involved in your communities, and I hope that people continue to be involved. And, I really do look forward to continuing the work that we've started. And I know that Administrator Chansky does have a letter from, did you want to read that?
Yeah, so I just have a letter. Obviously, Councilmember Roney couldn't be here tonight. He did ask that I read this into the minutes, and considering it's during this, I think this is an appropriate time just to do so. So he just said, as many as you know, I have been and continue to be in favor of the disc golf course from its inception. I believe this is a wonderful addition to our community. I am not in favor of canceling / stopping the expansion of the course, but that does not mean that I'm not open to valid asks of the city to consider individual and tangible concerns. I've recently met with some homeowners that expressed concerns regarding the course and the proximity of the course to their property. In discussions, they are asking for a compromise, a solution to their concern. These individuals are not asking to stop the expansion, but to be worked with on an individual basis concerning the proximity of the tee/target to their property. With this being said, I would encourage the council to direct staff to pursue any further work, to pause any further work with the expansion and contact homeowners that abut the course to allow the homeowners' request to be addressed with city staff. Keeping in mind that this work may be something that is needed after the melting of the snow, making the new expansion course walkable. Our staff has done a wonderful job on this course, and I believe that it is a great asset to the community. Thank you. So he has requested that I read that.
All right, thank you. All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second?
All right, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you for coming, and thank you